All right, so this should be a pretty fun topic for us, I hope. One that hopefully I'm qualified to talk about. I've been hosting websites since, I don't know, 2002 or 2003, and have seen so many different kind of iterations over time, and have used so many different platforms personally. Um, so in 2024, where do things stand? And you know, how can you avoid the hidden costs? Let's jump in and take a look. So, like Jenna was saying, my name is Joel Steidl. I'm our VP of Engineering. I've been with the Aten team for over 15 years. Um, and I love doing Drupal development and leading our dev team and collaborating with clients on solving technical solutions. When I'm not doing that stuff, I enjoy exploring Colorado where I live and hanging out with my family. You could see us there on the right after a really fun soccer game. All right, before we jump right into this, I would actually uh, love to do a quick poll. I kind of want to see where people are coming from here. Um, And of course, maybe you're hosting multiple websites here. Just choose what option maybe is best. Or maybe like where your main website's hosted, or if you have multiple, you can just choose one that best applies to you. All right. Cool. So this is interesting. Um, there are a handful of you that have joined that may have maybe I'm preaching to the choir because you're already using a platform like I'll be advocating for. But several of you on the call are maybe using, self-hosted, a cloud platform, or a budget host. Cool. That will be helpful. So let's jump right into it. So choosing a hosting provider for your website, I think just quickly some high level bullet points of like why this actually matters. So hosting can impact your site's performance, security, and stability. Maybe that's obvious. Budget hosting, and I'll define that here in a moment. It it can look cost effective on paper, but can really lead to some hidden costs. And I'll also define what I mean by specialized hosting. But that's often the smarter choice for Drupal or WordPress or fill in the blank. Uh, whatever sort of application you're using, usually there's a hosting provider that sort of caters to that. And we'll talk a little bit why that could be important. All right. Okay, so before I talk about some of the downsides of budget hosting or cloud hosting, let me define what that really means. So, budget hosting, um, sorry to pick on some of these. I've actually been a DreamHost customer since 2003, I think. So, I still have my account, and it can be a good option depending on what you're doing. Um, so, for budget hosting, I would kind of throw like DreamHost, Bluehost, GoDaddy. There's a bunch of kind of budget hosts out there. And then cloud hosting, I would kind of define as your, you know, Microsoft, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, Amazon Web Services, DigitalOcean, those sorts of things. Um, so especially for the cloud hosting option, it really requires like a dedicated team for service maintenance and security and whatnot. It may seem really simple to like spin up a digital ocean instance, but like keeping that instance all updated and whatnot really falls on a, you know, someone technical to do so. Um, and there's a lot of risk involved if one person is managing those critical server tasks on your team. Just like kind of uh, I hate to say it, but the hit by a bus. If something happens to that one person or they move on from your organization, it's a little bit like scary what could happen with that. And it's hard and costly to replace a specialized developer. Um, I'll probably make the case for, depending on your organization size, and it could be quite large in some cases, why someone should be spending their time trying to host your website in 2024. So let's get into it a little bit more. So specialized hosts, let me kind of define that. That's providers like Pantheon or Acquia or Kinsta, Platform.sh. There's a whole bunch out there. Um, these are more like software as a service, meaning, a lot of these folks like Acquia or Pantheon, et cetera, platform are built on top of some of the cloud hosts that I mentioned on the previous page, but they are responsible for keeping a lot of the server level stuff up to date and configuration of those cloud hosting providers. And that's a really big deal. That is not maybe as simple as it seems. Um, Also, with these specialized hosts, a lot of time you get greater stability and you have a whole lot less reliance on individual expertise because, um, again, there's not like one person on your team that has set up your web hosting environment. Um, and a lot of times, that's done. If an individual is responsible, they've done it in the way that they know is best, and it's not necessarily like best practice. So, for example, if person A set all this up and then person B is now responsible, it may be really hard for them to like know exactly how everything is set up, and you can avoid that again by using one of these specialized hosts. So key features of specialized hosting, um, staging environments. So this is really important. With a budget host or a cloud host, maybe you have your live website. So whatever you would see when you go to your organization's domain, I refer to that as your live website or your live environment. Um, on those platforms, you don't necessarily get other staging environments. And what I mean by a staging environment is a non-production or non-live environment where you can test new features and functionality and updates. And that's something that you really uh, get for free with these specialized hosting providers. And it's really important to be able uh, to test functionality before things go live. With the budget or cloud host, your response, like if you want a staging environment, you have to like set that up separately. And it can be honestly a pretty big pain because not only are you managing a live or production environment, now you get to manage and maintain a staging environment. Automated backups. So again, on these like budget hosts or cloud hosting, a lot of them like definitely provide backups, but those backups can be very hard to get at, or uh, no one clearly know, it's not clear where to go find those backups if they're made on a regular basis. Whereas I'll show in a little bit, like using Pantheon as an example, anyone that has access to the Pantheon instance of a particular site has access to the backups. And that's really important. And then, of course, security updates. Um, so Drupal or WordPress, for example, run on a lot of the same like underlying software. So, at a server level, maybe that's Apache or Nginx, and then a database, MySQL or MariaDB, and then the code language that WordPress and Drupal are built on is PHP. All of these, in addition to WordPress and Drupal, need updates all the time, and you're on the hook for that typically especially if you're using like a cloud provider. Um, and if you're using budget hosts, sometimes they're not always great about prompting you to upgrade your site to a new version, or again, going back to the staging environments, if you if you upgrade PHP, sometimes you have to do that right on the live site, so you don't even get to test it first in a staging environment, and that's should feel scary to break your live website that easily. Okay, and then going down some additional features that are developer friendly, and in some cases not developer like just friendly to everyone. Period. Standardized access is great. So a lot of Pantheon, Acquia, etc. Um, they're kind of telling developers how you can interact with the platform. And I find this really valuable because that's documented and standard. And so a lot of times that's like over Git version control. So um, I like that from a standpoint of it leaves a paper trail of all changes being made to your site's code over time. Um, Again, a lot of those providers encourage developers to connect over what's called SSH, and that's like key-based authentication. And it's just a lot more secure way to connect than maybe FTP or other ways that other providers may be using. Um, Access control for non-technical users. So this is a big one, with some of these specialized platforms, um, someone in marketing or depending on the organization's size, maybe like a CEO or whatever could own the hosting platform, and then they could be the ones granting access to developers and other people that need access. And that's a big difference than these cloud platforms in particular, where maybe the one person has set it up and they're the only ones that really have access and know how to grant access to others. Um, I actually dealt with this recently with Amazon Web Services. I had a client reach out and say, "Hey, we're getting billed from Amazon Web Services, and we don't even know how it's being used." And it was set up long ago by someone, like I have no idea who set it up, and it's really hard to gain access to if you weren't the original person to set that up. Um, cool. And then website speed optimizations, for providers that are catering to WordPress and Drupal. Again, they know how to configure their servers to provide the best performance for those platforms. And, you know, like Pantheon, for example, uses something called a content delivery network called Fastly, and you just automatically get that with the platform. That means that I'll try to not get too technical here, but as your website, different pages are loaded on your website, they get cached, and that means that the next person in line that goes to a particular page, as long as nothing has changed on that page, they'll get a cached version of that. And again, Pantheon has like an integration with a content delivery network or CDN called Fastly. And again, if you were like setting up your own hosting on a cloud provider or using a budget host, like you just don't get a feature like that out of the box. All right, so time savings and risk reduction. Again, if you're in an organization and you're paying someone to manage a server to run your website, even if they're using like Amazon Web Services or a cloud host or whatever, I just question the value in that at the end of the day. Now there are use cases I acknowledge where that may be necessary and useful. Like so I don't want everyone to leave this and say, hey, like we have to get off all of these cloud platforms immediately. I think trying to understand how they're being used is important. Um, but if you're just hosting a website and you're using a cloud platform or a budget provider, that's where I would really question that use of money and also that sort of risk that you're opening yourselves up to. Um, so those specialized hosts really minimize the time that you're spending on server issues. I would say zero, because you're not really dealing with if there's a server level problem, you get support and somebody else takes care of that. So you're not like, again, um, that's not on your team any longer at that point. Developers can then spend their time focusing on site improvements and not server management. And then you really reduce the risk of downtime and security breaches. So uh, it's it removes a lot of the liability from your organization when you offload that to a provider. Um, so again, the difference there is if you're using Amazon Web Services or another cloud platform, you've configured that to run your website and be your provider. A lot of that risk still falls back on you because you're the one that's configuring that cloud platform. Whereas if you give that to a Pantheon or Acquia of the world, they are owning more of that risk. Just to be clear about that. Okay, so before I walk through some additional features of this, if you've never like been in, if you've never seen a dashboard of one of these specialized hosting providers, um, I'll walk you through some of the features and functionality um, that may be useful or just again, I'm trying to uh, expose you to that. So budget hosting, cloud hosting, I think can really lead to higher costs over time. Even if that's like, I would throw like just the overall risk into that category as well. So like if you had your site was hacked or other security issues, which I've definitely had issues with on budget hosts, to be clear. Um, that can definitely lead to higher cost over time. So that monthly or yearly cost may look cheap, but in reality, someone's spending a lot of time managing that, or they should be spending a lot of time managing that month over month. Specialized hosting ensures security, scalability, and performance. So I think it allows you to scale more easily without having to, let's say you're on a budget host and your website starts to grow or whatever, you will hit a limit of what you can do with that. And then it's like, okay, how do we get off of this budget hosting platform? Where on a lot of these specialized hosts, you could just like bump your plan to the next level, and they've taken care of like what it means to scale up. Um, so really, I see this more of an insurance plan for your site. So or an investment really. So let's take a look. I'll take questions here in a little bit, but I mentioned several different providers, and we can go back and look at that. In our example, my example of some of these specialized providers are Pantheon, Acquia, Kinsta, Platform.sh. There are more. There are probably plenty that I don't know of either. Um, for our example today, I'm going to jump into a Pantheon site. Um, I'm using that simply as an example. A lot of the features and functionality that I will show off in Pantheon could be available in any of these other platforms. I just needed one example to share. This isn't, you know, uh, this isn't a full endorsement of their product. While I do think it is a great product, I just want you to know this is one example. All right, so I'm going to jump into the Pantheon dashboard here, and just give you all a quick tour from a perspective of things that, if you're using Amazon Web Services, for instance, it's just really not this simple at all. Because a lot of it falls back on a developer to set up a lot of stuff that's just baked into this interface. So I'll go back to granting access. I think this is a really huge benefit to Pantheon in a lot of ways in other platforms. Is again, a marketing person on your team or someone non-technical could be the account owner on one of these services. They can manage billing, and then under team, they can manage who has access to the site. And so all you have to do is enter an email address and add them to the team, and then they get access to the site's code and whatnot in that way. So again, you'll never fall into a scenario where if a developer leaves, you have that risk of getting locked out of your system completely. Um, Other things I will show here. So I talked about having the ability for multiple environments. Um, so in Pantheon, one nice feature that you get out of the box is not only do you get your live website, you get a dev and test environment as well. And so those are completely different instances of your website that you can test new features or security updates completely separate than your live website. And Pantheon's made it really easy to do things as well. Like one big challenge is if you have set up multiple environments, say on like a budget host or Amazon Web Services, is, of course, your live website is constantly getting new content and new files and whatnot. That means that these other environments can quickly get out of date. And refreshing those, if you're rolling your own solution or using, cloud or budget host, for example, getting that new content down to one of those staging environments can be a huge pain or take way longer than it should. And in Pantheon, for example, you can do that with one click. So you can see they have a functionality here of clone your database, which Drupal and WordPress all use a database to store your site's content. And then files, those are like any of the files you're uploading through like the media browser in WordPress or Drupal. So you could quickly say, all right, for our dev environment, let's just click the one-click button here and refresh our database and files from a different environment. So again, this is a great feature for not only for a developer, but someone non-technical could say like, hey, I want to test something out on the dev environment. They could come in and refresh that without the need of a developer. Same goes for backups. So at any point, you can set up a schedule for backups on any environment. And then you have easy access to the most important things of that backup, all from a central location. So anybody that has team access can get access to those. So if you're onboarding a new developer to a project, it's very easy for them to get what they need. And then each of these environments get their own domain on Pantheon. So if I click through on one of those, again, another nice to have, right? Like you get links to those environments directly from a central interface. Cool, and you can see, yeah, it has its own pantheonsite.io. If you have a paid plan, you can actually assign custom domains to any environment if that's important to you. And then another huge benefit, again, that if you're on a budget host or a cloud host, is like, how do we actually get code onto those environments? And with Pantheon or any of these other software as a service platforms, they make it really easy for a developer that gets access to come in and view this connection information, and they can get access to the things they need. So if they need to get access to code through Git, they can copy this and run that command. Or if they need to get access to a database, all of that connection information is readily available. So again, it's not one person that's like holding the keys to this information. It's all available through this dashboard. All right. So hopefully uh, hopefully that was a helpful overview of some of the functionality that might be beneficial to any organization that's maybe chosen uh, to go in a different direction. Maybe you've never gotten a chance to see an interface like this before.